Obviously, there was a big news story over the last few weeks, and I know you probably want me to make a video about it, so that's what I'm going to do. NXT UK shut down. Both of their viewers are devastated, Wrestling Entertainment Series takes another W, but this is not the end for NXT UK because apparently it's expanding into NXT Europe. But what will NXT Europe look like? In this video, I'm doing predictions, so these aren't leaks or inside scoops. This is just what I think will happen. Let's begin. First of all the non-Europeans are fired, Europeans only. All non-European TV deals are cancelled, right? Fuck USA, fuck Fox. This is going to be on BBC4 primetime. All the old people are going to be watching a documentary about trains going through Hertfordshire or something like that, and then BAM! NXT Europe, and they're going to be sold because it'll be really exciting and unexpected, right? Now that that's out of the way, we're going into our first week, right? Week 1, and we go to the wrestling hotspot that is Albania. Paige, who's the general manager, also the commentators are Wade Barrett and Nigel McGuinness, but Paige comes out and she says, we're not bringing back the NXT UK title, we're going to be bringing back a different title, the European title. And out comes Tyler Bate and he says, well, as the last NXT UK champion, I assume this one's for me. And she says, well, actually, you will have a chance to win this title, but we're actually going to be bringing back the last ever European champion, and you can face him for the belt. And he's like, oh, as in the last ever European champion. He's one of a kind, I suppose you could say. Mr. 5-star frog splash, you could say. Rob Van Dam. I don't know who that is. Then we get the Grizzled Young Vets versus Pretty Deadly. Then we get Aoife Valkyrie versus Becky Lynch. Valkyrie beats her in 30 seconds. And then we get the main event. Tyler Bate, Rob Van Dam, European title on the line. And the winner is Rob Van Dam. Week 2, we go to Slovenia. Then we get the Grizzled Young Vets versus Pretty Deadly. Then Rob Van Dam defends his title 3 times in one night. He takes on Drew McIntyre, Doudrop, and Ludwig Kaiser, and he beats all 3 of them in singles competition. Week 3, we go to Andorra, and the Grizzled Young Vets take on Pretty Deadly. Then Rob Van Dam defends his European title against Alba Fyre. He loses, but then decides, you know what, I lost, but I'm going to defend my title anyway against Axiom. And he loses again, and he says, you know what, I'm going to keep defending my title for the rest of the night, because that's what I want to do. So he loses his European title to Becky Lynch, Butch, Charlie Dempsey, Tyler Bate, Finn Balor, Giovanni Vinci, Gunther, Ilya Dragunov, Isla Dawn, Ginny, Mark Coffey, Nathan Fraser, Nikki Ash, Noam Dar, Rampage Brown, Ridge Holland, Sheamus, and Aoife Valkyrie. Then Paige comes out to the ring, and she's like, what are you doing? Do you know your NXT Europe professional wrestling record is 4-20? And he says, I know, and then disappears into the distance, never to be seen again. But the rest of the roster are pissed, right? Because first of all, Alba Fyre says, look, I was the first person to beat him, it's my championship. Aoife Valkyrie says, technically, every new title match was a new title match, meaning the previous reign was vacated, so I'm the actual champion. And all 20 people are all debating back and forth, who should win, who should be the champion, and it's all settled next week. Where else? It has to be San Marino. And it opens up with a 20-person Royal Rumble for the vacated European Championship. And the winner of this Royal Rumble is Axiom, who then unmasks and says, I'm A-Kid, I've been A-Kid this entire time, and I am now the European champion. Did you know this is actually A-Kid? I only learned that the other day. Anyway, the point is, Paige comes out and she says, I'm sorry, we can't have A-Kid winning this championship, only over 18s. So he gets stripped of the title, it's vacant again, and then we have Grizzled Young Vets versus Pretty Deadly. NXT Europe takeover, and we're going to the city that really deserves a wrestling event as big as this. Of course, I'm talking about Riga. We open up with a triple threat between 3 people who Rob Van Dam beat. Drew McIntyre, Doudrop, and Ludwig Kaiser, with the winner going on to enter the Royal Rumble in the main event later on. Drew McIntyre looks like he's about to win it when all of a sudden, who stands up from his seat? None other than Wade Barrett. He comes in, confronts Drew McIntyre, when in from behind comes Mason Ryan. who wipes out Drew McIntyre. There's no winner. Mason Ryan has established himself, and we have a Nexus reunion in 2022, but only with the European members. Then we get Grizzled Young Vets versus Pretty Deadly, but this time it's for the tag team titles, the European tag team titles. The match gets thrown out because of interference from none other than one of the greatest European tag teams in WWE history, the Highlanders. Then we main event with a 20-person Royal Rumble. The winner is Rampage. Then who comes out to confront him? None other than Mason Ryan. And we are getting a Mason Ryan Rampage stare down, a confrontation, the dream match. It's all getting built up when all of a sudden in swings some fella on a rope whose boot connects with the head of Rampage, completely decapitating him, and that man is none other than former British WWE superstar Paul Burchill. And this takes us into Azerbaijan, where Paige has an announcement to make. She says next week we will be having qualifiers for the Money in the Bank. Then we crown our first ever tag team champions in NXT Europe. Grizzled Young Vets versus Pretty Deadly versus the Highlanders. The Highlanders win, and then there's a post-match altercation between the Highlanders and Ridge Holland and Butch. There is then a new announcement. The announcement that a new signing is going to be on his way in the coming weeks, but we don't know who it is. Then in the main event for the now vacated NXT Europe Championship, Paul Burchill takes on Mason Ryan. Mason Ryan wins, and after the match we have another confrontation between Mason Ryan and fellow big Welshman Rob Terry. Then we're going to Luxembourg, and that's where we open up the show with Ridge Holland and Butch against the Highlanders. The Highlanders absolutely battered them. They fucking murder Butch. He's dead. They wipe the floor with him and retain their titles. Then we get the Money in the Bank qualifiers, right? Alba Fyre beating Charlie Dempsey, Doudrop beating Finn Balor, Vinci beating Ilya Dragunov, Isla Dawn beating Ludwig Kaiser, Mark Coffey beating Nathan Fraser, Nikki Ash beating Noam Dar, right? So that's our lineup. But in between each match, there is a bit of static, a bit of TV static that kind of interrupts the broadcast. It's a bit of a nuisance, but it doesn't really lead to anything. It's just there. Then the mystery new signing is teased again before our main event for the title itself. Rob Terry versus Mason Ryan. They square up to each other and everyone's very excited, right? This is a dream match for a lot of people, but after 5 minutes it gets kind of boring. Everybody seems to sort of lose interest in it. So the audience, they all walk out. The stadium is now empty. Then all the rest is backstage. They find it kind of boring too, so they all leave. All the staff walk out. They get kind of bored. The ref, the commentators. So it's just Rob Terry and Mason Ryan left. One of them does a superplex to the other off the top turnbuckle, and then the ring shakes and the ring collapses, and then the stadium collapses. Fortunately, nobody's killed because they all left and the stadium was empty anyway, but Rob Terry and Mason Ryan are never seen again. We go to the Faroe Islands for our next one. The mystery new signing is teased again, but this time we're told he will be here next week. Then Ridge Holland puts out a challenge for a rematch against the Highlanders, but this time he won't be teaming with Butch because Butch is dead. He's teaming with the bruiserweight Pete Dunne. Then we get it, a Money in the Bank ladder match. But during the match, all of a sudden, the static returns. The TV static is back. And this time, it cuts to a video, none other than Hayde Vanson, the British lad that was meant to fight The Undertaker years ago. He's back, wipes the floor with everyone, and there is no Money in the Bank winner. Next week, we go to Moldova. Then we open up with Ridge Holland and Pete Dunne against the Highlanders. This time, the Highlanders beat the shit out of Pete Dunne and they retain their titles. Then we've a Hayde Vanson gauntlet. Hayde Vanson runs through every single person in that Money in the Bank match one-on-one, beats them one after the other. Then Paige storms out and she says, you know what? It's time I introduced our new signing, our mystery man, none other than Nick Aldis. Then Walter comes out, fucking slaps the shit out of Hayde Vanson, and he's awarded the European Championship for his bravery. But then Drew McIntyre attacks Gunther and he says, Gunther, Brexit means Brexit. And this leads us into NXT Europe Takeover 2, Montenegro. and we open the show with Aoife Valkyrie versus Charlie Dempsey. Aoife Valkyrie wins, but in the process she does injure herself and she's out for about 2 to 3 weeks. It's just a minor injury, just a sprain. Then we get the Grizzled Young Vets versus Pretty Deadly, and then it's time for our main event. GUNTHER versus Drew McIntyre. The title's on the line. Drew McIntyre wins by interference from Ridge Holland, only for GUNTHER to be saved from the beatdown by Imperium. Following this event, we go to Liechtenstein. We open up the show with the #1 contenders match to see who will be the #1 contender, and of course it is an Elimination Inferno match, which Becky Lynch wins by burning all of her co-workers alive. In the main event, Imperium take on Drew McIntyre, Ridge Holland, and their new tag team partner, Danny Burch, who just looks like he kind of fits that kind of bill. Team EU, Team Brexit, and Team Brexit win by interference from Ginny. Kosovo, that is the home of our next big show. We open it with a match for the title. It's just a one-match show. Drew McIntyre versus Becky Lynch. McIntyre retains because of interference from Team Brexit, and it looks like they're going to beat up Team EU when all of a sudden, Sheamus. Then we head to the wrestling mad country that is Monaco. We have the rematch, Drew McIntyre versus Becky Lynch. Becky Lynch wins this time. Team EU come out to celebrate when all of a sudden the 5th man for Team Brexit is revealed.
You all laughed at me. Well, I have to say, you're not laughing now, are you?
Nigel Farage enters the building. The following week, we're in Cyprus. A big brawl plays out. The 5-person team, that is Team Brexit, taking on the 4-person team, that is Team EU, when all of a sudden, who runs in to even the odds for Europe? Commander Aziz, because he's actually Polish. Another thing I just learned. Then Aoife Valkyrie comes out and she says, hey, everyone else is burned to death in the Inferno elimination match, but I was injured for 2 to 3 weeks, and I also beat you in 30 seconds on the very first day, so I would like a rematch, please, at NXT TakeOver the Vatican City, if you don't mind, to which Becky Lynch accepts. NXT Europe TakeOver 3, the Vatican City, Team Brexit versus Team Europe, Team Brexit win. Then we have Aoife Valkyrie versus Becky Lynch. The winner of this match and new European champion is Aoife Valkyrie. It's a dramatic, hard-fought fight when all of a sudden, who shows up? None other than Paige. And she says, Aoife, this was all part of the plan. I let Rob Van Dam fight 20 opponents and disappear. I refused to let Axiom defend his NXT Europe title because he wouldn't lose it. I sent Paul Burchill in to decapitate Rampage. I let Hayde Vanson ruin the Money in the Bank so nobody would cash in. I let Rob Terry and Mason Ryan fight in a bet-down stadium that would collapse. I let all the other contenders burn to death in the Inferno match, and I let the rest of the roster get distracted by Brexit versus the European Union, so that when it all came down to it, I could make my return last second and run away with the WWE European Championship. So for the final match of the night, we have Paige versus Aoife Valkyrie for the title. Aoife wins in 30 seconds. I don't even think NXT Europe's going to happen.